then cash the checks in this region. Region 7, over 12,000 persons were registered so far. The registration is still ongoing in this region. Soon they would, in fact, they have already started processing some checks. Once they register, they verify, then they process checks. So they've already started processing some checks for this region, and those soon would be, they would start the distribution process in region 7. So that brings us to region 4. So far, over 221,000 persons have been registered in region 4, and about 156,000 have been verified, and they've started printing checks for those who have been verified. So let me give you an explanation. Is once they register, they still have to go and check the database to see there's no duplication, etc. So that is what they mean by verifying people. And so once they're verified, the checks are printed. They're public servants, over 50,000 public servants and members of the discipline services were registered. The checks were printed, and soon these will be distributed by the agencies. This should hopefully commence over the next few days, and hopefully be completed before the end of the year. This does not represent all of the people in the public sector payroll, because you have about 6,000 to 9,000 persons on the public sector payroll. So only about 50,000 of the 6,000 to 9,000 have been registered thus far. And they have about 44,000 pensioners who have been registered. 27,000 checks were printed, and the remainder are currently being verified and processed. And the ministry is currently engaging the NIS and Ministry of Human Services to have these distributed. This is the report from the Ministry of Finance that I received just earlier today, given the many queries that we have received about how the exercise is going. As I explained, soon we're going to be starting the process of registration in the remaining five regions. So hopefully the money could be appropriated in the budgetary process early next year, and then those regions would receive, and people in those regions would receive their cash grant too. I just wanted to inform you that, as you may know by now, that you're going to have each ministry doing their annual press conference, so they will be able to explain in great detail the vast and remarkable progress our country has made and in the past year, and how in their sectors our country has moved forward in providing better services to the citizens of our country. So you're going to have detailed explanations about their programs that they had approved in the budget and how they have fared with the implementation of those programs. I just want to quickly draw attention for the naysayers about just what has happened in this period. In the last couple of months, we have had the president announce the cash grant, and now already you're going to have, before early next year, $30 billion in the pockets of over 300,000, well, about 300,000 citizens. And within a short time period thereafter, another $30 billion or so, or more, even more, depending on the number of people who are eligible in the pockets of Guyanese. This was not there until 2 months ago. It's happening already, and it's going to result in every Guyanese getting a sum of money from the Treasury. We have just seen the President announce another cash grant to the people living with disabilities. This has become almost an ongoing feature every year, a one-off grant. And each of the 25,000 persons living with disability will receive $35,000. May not be a lot, but when you look at the vast numbers of people, this would result in $875 million going to the into the pockets of the 25,000 persons living with disability. We have another 69,000 public servants receiving about $18 billion in the 10% payout. And this is all happening now. 69,000 Guyanese in the public sector. In addition to that, we have the 12,000 members of the discipline services getting the $1.8 billion 1-month tax-free bonus that APNU, you recall, took away from them and we reintroduced. That is a major payment to people there. In this year, again, just recently, the farmers are going to get $2 billion worth of fertilizer assistance to help them with farming, thereby reducing their cost of production. The Amerindian communities this year have gotten, outside of the regular budget, $5 billion from the sale of carbon credit. We have had scores of Guyanese completing their studies paid for by the government of Guyana this year. You've already had an announcement of free education from university education from next year, and the setting aside of $10 billion in the next year's budget to address the large number of NIS pensioners who did not qualify through enough contributions. They did not have enough contributions to qualify for an NIS pension. They will get a one-off grant early next year because of the $10 billion that has been announced that will be in next year's budget. We have thousands of new people, Guyanese, who have gotten employment this year. Many, you remember the days of APNU when there was hardly any work. People were losing jobs in almost all of the sectors. The economy was in doldrum. People did not have employment opportunities. Well, tens of thousands of people more this year got jobs and are working. So just to give you, I just wanted to give you what's happening just in a few months. And it's all exciting, and it's resulting in people getting more help from the state and in their right in all sectors, whether they're farmers, Amerindians, public servants, the sugar workers too, who were treated so badly in the 5 years under APNU. They have a multi-year agreement, and now they have a salary adjustment upwards to a minimum of $100,000. Almost every sector or service men and women, they've gotten help from the government, consistent with our philosophy of ensuring that all of our people receive assistance from the state. What do we have from the opposition? Naysayers. Oh, they're opposed to the cash grant. They're for it. They're opposed to it. They're for payment of higher wages, then they're opposed to what we paid. They're opposed to almost everything. The farmers getting fertilizer assistance, they were opposed to the carbon credit, the sale of carbon credit. They're not for anything. They're opposed to everything that have been done. That's the difference between the People's Progressive Party, a progressive government, and all these gripers, naysayers. Every week you hear them. Everything has to be wrong. And they're the paragons of virtue. They know what to do. They're so competent now in opposition. But they were a disaster in government. And there would be a disaster in any situation given their philosophy for managing things. So I'm very pleased as to how the year went. We will have another opportunity to examine all of these things in greater detail, but I've seen this, I've heard it, I've walked in many communities, and people are positive about their future. They're looking to the new year and to the future with excitement. Many people now are getting a mortgage to own their own homes. Many more people have owned homes this year. Many have gotten a house lot this year. I told you already, many are improving their educational qualifications that will qualify them for higher wages. This is all happening in our country. And it is in stark contrast to the gloomy picture that the few others, who I must say people don't pay too much attention to them because they know they were there and they had a dismal record, but that's what they're trying to paint, the picture. So before I move on to some of the things that have been said this week by the opposition, because as I told you in the past, I used the Thursday press conference to address some of the issues that the lies that they would tell during the course of the week. But you know, we have been having a huge battle to ensure that we reverse the profligacy and also the massive corruption that took place under APNU through a rigged procurement system. A procurement system that allowed a minister to call a party sympathizer like the PNC sympathizer like Anand Gulsaran, who was a former Auditor General, and say to him, we have some contracts to give out. This is by his own admission. We have some contracts to give out. Which ones would you like? And he picked the ones he liked, running into tens of millions of dollars, and they awarded it to him. And he wrote that in Stabroek News. That is how he got his contracts for the forensic audits he did. Bypassing the procurement law and illegally getting contracts awarded to him because only the Auditor General or the Public Accounts Committee of the Parliament can award auditing contracts, not the Minister of Finance. That was pursuant to a law that we passed in the past, when we were in government in the past. So that was how contracts were awarded. And he said it openly, and it seemed normal. You recall Patterson bypassing again the procurement system, taking an unsolicited bid. So there was a bid process to do a feasibility study for the Demerara Bridge crossing. The bids came in, they annulled the bids, and then somebody went to his office and said, we will do it for you. And he did not say, as is required by law, go to the Ministry of Finance or wait until a new procurement process is announced. He took that unsolicited offer to him, Patterson, to the cabinet directly, illegally, because you cannot bypass the tender board in our law. Cabinet approved it illegally because they don't have the right of approval, just the right of no objection, which is again consistent with a law that we passed when we were there, removing the right to award contract by the cabinet and giving that authority to the technical body, the tender board. They bypassed all of that and awarded a massive contract, $150-something million contract. Again, that was how it happened. That is how procurement used to be done under APNU. You saw the $1.6 billion that they spent on the Durban Park fiasco there, the stadium that they built there or whatever they call it. 600 million missing, no procurement, no public procurement, no advertisement, but a contract, well, contracts for $1.6 billion issued. That was how it was done. We already went through what is required already, also by the procurement law, that every contract issued by the MPTAB must be on their website, posted on their website, the name of the contractor, the contract sum, and the procurement method done. Must be three essential elements of what they post. From 2015 to 2020, not a single one was posted. We don't know who they were awarded to, contracts were awarded to, or what procurement method they used. We have faithfully, since we got into office, posted every one of those contracts complying with the law. So that is what we've been struggling against. Of course, the magnitude of civil works now is greater because, remember, they were spending every cent in $90 billion of increased taxes per year in the 5 years they were there, not to expand the capital program of this country because it was lower in every year than 2014. They were using it for consumption. They were using every cent of $90 billion more per year they collected in more taxes because they put in increased taxes for consumption. That is their great economic strategy, consume it all. So we've expanded enormously the capital budget. So bigger challenges and greater opportunities for corruption too. Bigger challenges, greater opportunities. But we have managed because of an insistence in following the procurement law that and complying with all of the regulations. That's why we've been able to implement a massively enhanced capital program, more schools, hospitals, roads, everything being built now with less corruption than they had in that period, and they were spending a smaller sum of money. And the ones that we have had where we have identified corruption, we have not swept it under the carpet. We identify all the areas where there may be corrupt practices, and we spoke about this. Openly, the president has dealt with this. I met with every permanent secretary, every REO, every head of large agencies, public agencies that are doing procurement. And we said, you have to comply with the procurement law. If you fail to do this, you will face the consequences. In an open meeting there, you saw it reported widely in the country, across the country. And we listed all of the things that we had identified that were sources of corruption, from inflating bills to award to family-owned companies, to engineers soliciting payments for passing shoddy work, but not instituting liquidating damages for delayed work. A whole range of things we listed. We didn't sweep them under the carpet, and we said we'll pay attention to the following things. So that has been done. And if you want to read all of the things that we have spoken about, just go and see the report that came out of my meeting with all of the permanent secretaries and the REOs, etc. It's publicly reported. And you will see that we went through every aspect of all of the things that we find wrong with in some cases of procurement. And we made the case that we also were positive with the permanent secretaries and the others too, because they've worked hard to implement a bigger program. 95% of that which is done well and stuff like that. It's the 5% that we have problems with that we're going after. So we've kept a constant focus on this all year long to get this going, wherever we have found things. And that's why it's infuriating sometimes when I see things and people don't face consequences. And last week, something happened that one of those that caused me great grief and made me infuriated. So we're doing the Arby Barker Road now as part of the upgrading of the city that has been changing the whole of South Georgetown, but South Georgetown used to be a place that nothing happened in. The land values, the home values were less than in North Georgetown because of lack of infrastructure, lack of business, banks and hotels and those things were not there. So we're determined to change all of that. And you see it happening. Boulevards being built, new hotels going close to in South Georgetown, new business ventures, and property values have gone up. And we're building a road network now so that not just the 4-lane road going through the Heroes Highway through South Georgetown that makes it the front of the city now, not the back part of the city, but also connecting South Georgetown with the 4-lane Ogle bypass. That will make a huge difference to property values and homes in places like South Romvelt, North and South Romvelt, etc. So consistent with this, we are connecting and expanding the Arby Barker Road. And we want the community to benefit from all these changes. So then all of these electricity poles collapsed and left South Romvelt and the other surrounding areas in darkness. Now, this could happen, but we were very concerned about as an accident. Accidents do happen. But I started digging into this a bit more, and this was not an ordinary accident. What that discomforted this community in such a major way. So we looked at what happened, and Public Works and GPL have to give credible explanations, because I'm going to be on their case until we get to the bottom of this. Because for one, these poles that were moved there, from the wooden poles to the concrete poles now, they were moved out of the pathway of the road to expand the road. So I'm told now that they were not put there, they were not laid according to specifications. They were not put down. according to specifications. So Public Works need to say who designed this, who was responsible for what was the contractor paid for, whether it is a design fault or the contractor did not comply with the design, and who supervised this, which engineer supervised this and allowed this to happen. And it's time that we start terminating people who are not doing their work, who've been paid by the government to oversee work that should have been done properly. Because just imagine, if that didn't happen there, we would have never known that these poles were not placed according to specs. Because someone, either the contractor didn't do their work properly, and if the contractor didn't do the work properly, they had to do this with the complicity of the person who is supervising the work. And there should be consequences. People have to be blacklisted and fired for this sort of thing. Or it's not going to change. Because we can't see this as politicians all the time. You pay people to do work properly and to supervise the work, the staff. And someone needs to give credible answers. So either Public Works or GPL on what took place. And then why would you allow the road contractor to dig out the entire stretch of drain that would discomfort people getting into their yards? Why couldn't they just do it by 2 blocks at a time and then build the concrete drains? This is all ridiculous. So it happens routinely. I see it everywhere. We have a bunch of engineers who just go down, walk around the road, and they discomfort people all the time when they could work differently. And so it's something that bothers me personally, and I'm going to watch this because I think we're reaching a stage now where people have to face consequences, including staff of the government, who are responsible for designing things or supervising things, because they're getting a good salary now. In the past, it wasn't like the engineers in the state sector are earning a small sum of money. Now, some of them are earning huge salaries, and they don't pay enough regard to these issues. And we now need to hold people responsible. So this is consistent with not just fighting to clean up procurement and to ensure that we can minimize corruption to the greatest extent possible, but also to ensure that we are getting value for money, that when these things are planted there, they're planted in a way, the poles and public infrastructure is done, that they would last for 50 years into the future. Not 2 years down the road, you find out that they were not laid properly and they start collapsing. This is something that we have to pay great attention to. And the fact that we are doing 100 times, 200 times more than APNU would have done is not an excuse. It's not an excuse, because APNU would have probably planted one road, one pole, and do maybe 0.5 kilometer in a year of roads when we're doing, when we're doing 50 kilometers of roads, paving. So that's not an excuse, because sometimes people look at that. Yesterday, in Parliament, we saw the ugly side of APNU and AFC once again. They have, it's a really nasty thing when you listen to the presentations made in Parliament. We've already concluded nationally and, and demonstrated this, that the PNC, AFC, they don't have a track record of achievement. That is well known to everyone. 28 years of government from 1964 rather, to 1992. And in 1992, we're the poorest country in the hemisphere, bankrupt. That's what they took us to after 28 years of governance. So no track record whatsoever. Public servants, pauperized, everyone fleeing the country. That's their track record after 28 years of running the country. Total control and staying in office through rigged elections. So two legacies: bad economic management, bankrupting the country, and stealing elections. That's their legacy, 28 years. Move forward, fast forward to 2015 to 2020. It inherited an economy, it started going down again. Taxing people, economic output shrunk in every sector, 7,000 sugar workers laid off, everything. And then again, trying to steal the elections. So the legacy, that's their legacy after 33 years in government. No, nothing positive. Then they had another period when they controlled Parliament from 2011 to 2015. And look at their behavior in Parliament. They controlled that Parliament. They were just cutting the budgets for everything. Everything. Education, hinterland expenditure. So negative again. No track record. So let us conclude that. They had no track record of achievement. Track record of trying to steal elections. They have no plan for the future. They never had a plan, although they claimed they had a plan in 2015. They don't have a plan. Nigel Hughes is now saying, after 15 years of existence as a political party, let's get together and create a plan for the future. He wants the PPP to help him create the plan for the future. So, no plan for the future. They demonstrated in the 5 years, nothing. Not education, not healthcare, etc. So how do you contest an election when you had no achievement to talk about? You try to steal elections and you have no vision for the future, no plan for the future. You have to contest it on the basis of race alone, polarizing people. And we saw its ugly display once again in the Parliament yesterday. For something that is normal in most countries in their land acquisition acts for public purposes, they have some particular clauses. In most countries, in the Caribbean, elsewhere, our law was deficient. We didn't pass that law. We didn't pass the law at the beginning. It was deficient, it was done, it was always there. In fact, when the Constitution was changed, Burnham used to acquire property at, I think, 1938 value. That was his way of acquiring property. If we had kept the PNC model, we would have acquired these properties that we have to acquire for public purposes at 1938 value. In the new Constitution that we passed, I signed into law, it means market value you have to pay people for their properties, because it would have been expropriation otherwise. We changed it to market values. That was the PNC's record. And they acquired a lot of properties on the PNC at the old value, 1938 value, when they were there. So, to make it seem, because we were updating the law to bring it consistent with what is in the rest of the Caribbean, that it's a racist thing, and we will target Afro-Guyanese and Amerindian ancestral lands. It has absolutely nothing to an Amerindian land, absolutely nothing to do with Amerindian lands or targeting Afro-Guyanese. But they can't help themselves being racist, making everything about race. So let's talk a bit about what actually happened. When we had to acquire land to build the Berbice Bridge, the approaches, it was a large number. The PPP acquired land. 95% of the persons that we acquired the land from were Indo-Guyanese. They were not happy too with the price, but we worked out an arrangement with them, the deal. 95% were Indo-Guyanese. In the land for the pipeline that we had to acquire, to build the pipeline, another important project for the government of Guyana. One was the bridge across the Berbice River. Two, the pipeline that would lead to the power plant that would generate power for everyone. Over 80% of the land, the individuals from which we acquired the land were Indo-Guyanese. Many of them didn't want that to happen. They didn't want it. But we had to acquire for a public purpose, like every country does this. This is not unusual. The approach to the bridge on the West Coast side, we acquired land. There were 13 persons, they told me, all Indo-Guyanese. You didn't hear about discrimination there. The bridge access on this side of the river, it was about 40% Indo-Guyanese, the one that they're complaining about now. So how does this become racist when we acquire land? Even in the Heroes Highway, we had to acquire land from a large number of people there, and it's maybe about 50% Indo-Guyanese, and a number of people in Maka. We didn't have to acquire the land from them. We could have easily thrown people off because they were squatting. They had no title for land. But how did we deal with them? We gave them some money and we gave them land elsewhere, etc., and worked with them. They were squatting. Everyone was squatting there. Had no title for the land whatsoever, unlike in other places. So this is but we built a highway there for every Guyanese to use, not Indo-Guyanese are now using this highway alone. And the same thing on the West Coast. That is how we have acquired land. And we have worked with the people there. But they sought to make this racist, especially it's going to be targeting Amerindians, etc. Look what these people did to the Amerindian communities. When we left office, we left $10.2 million US under the LCDS funds to continue land titling activities in the Amerindian communities. They dismantled the land titling unit. In Parliament, they said if Amerindians got more land, the minister said that, they would not benefit from oil money because they're too greedy, avaricious. That is what the official position of the APNU was in Parliament. All of these ministers who were Amerindians, etc., and other members of Parliament on the other side didn't say a word. We objected to that from the PPP, calling the Amerindians greedy because they wanted the titles for their land and saying they wouldn't get oil money. That's what's APNU's track record. They stopped titling land. So to come and shed crocodile tears now, as soon as we got back into office, we reopened the unit and we've started retitling lands again for the Amerindian communities. The act that we passed in 2006 was a guaranteed way of ensuring that Amerindian communities who met two criteria, 25 years of existence there, the community, and with a community of over 150 persons, that they too would become eligible. We established the criteria for applying for land. APNU undermined all of this, now shedding crocodile tears about, an amendment we passed for, which is normal in most countries for public infrastructure, if you have to put public infrastructure. The government can't take your land to build a house for the minister, but it will do it like what we have done to put in roads, bridges, and that sort of stuff, so that all of our people benefit. You talk about, look at what they were trying to acquire land for. You remember Clarissa Reel. Clarissa Reel was a PNC member of parliament. They published in the official gazette they wanted to take her property away. Guess for what? To expand the Ministry of Legal Affairs. So administrative, not public infrastructure, like a road to drive on or a power plant to supply more power and cheaper power to our people. They wanted to take away her land just on Middle Street to expand the ministry. That 2016. You go back and read that when Patterson was there. Look at Amanza Walton. Amanza Walton said that we're going to take these lands and give it to friends, families, and favorites. Now, just months in the no confidence period, when the no confidence motion had already passed, the government had fallen as ruled by the CCJ, Winston Jordan put in the official gazette the following: Amanza Walton, nearly an acre of land transferred to her in Plantation Fairas, not through any transparent process. She got nearly an acre of land in Linden, prime land. The same gazette, Melissa Walton, a sister, got a plot of land, and a brother, Owen Walton, he got a plot of land. 3 members of her family got plots of land through an order by Jordan months before the elections of 2020, after the no confidence motion had already succeeded, transfer lands to them. You ask how many persons in Linden, ordinary people who needed land, poor people who needed a plot of land to build their houses, got that. But 3 members of her family, who were friends, families, and their favorites. That's what she said yesterday. So you have to have either you have to be brain dead or shameless to go to the parliament and make such a bold statement when you have a ton of dirty linen in your closet. Shameless. Imagine personally, they gave Lowenfield 216 acres in Linden. Now we have to buy land from a private individual to develop 1,000 plots for the ordinary people of Linden, their supporters. And they were not the only ones. I can give you the long list of people who got the land there and who are politically connected, friends and families. So if anyone has abused this land issue and in a duplicitous ways, people like Amanza Walton and the APNU, not the PPP. Every time we tried to acquire, we've dealt fairly with people. We've helped tons of people in all communities get a plot of land. Now 40,000 Guyanese of all walks of life, every race, now since the PPP got into office, they've secured a piece of land. Ask them how many Afro-Guyanese they gave land to, much less other Guyanese. So, but this racism will never stop because they have nothing else to talk about. They can't talk about anything else. The APNU and the AFC, nothing else. So it was utterly disgusting. And if you want to look at it, look at all of these. Look at these stories here. Christopher Jones, they bulldozed this family that own a black family that owned the land there. They bulldozed their land and gave it to Christopher Jones. How come they were not so concerned about taking away land from Afro-Guyanese? Bulldoze them. I have a ton of stuff here. I don't even want to go back to that period. It's so sickening. When I look at it now, look at this long list of people that they gave land to. All of them are politically connected. All of them. Ordinary people couldn't get any help. A long list. This is just a little one page of maybe about 9 pages through the official gazette, if you look at it. And it all happened before the election, just before 2020, and just after the elections too. Even in the 5-month period, when they lost the elections, they transformed. If we had started charging people for this, then Jordan should be facing criminal action for this. In fact, the worst ones is when he gave large tracts of land out at Ogle, handed the transport over to people without collecting any money payment on the agreement of sale. Some of them didn't even have agreement of sale. That is a major criminal act. And I don't know what's going on because people should face the courts for these matters. When you transfer 30 acres of land at Ogle to someone, give them transport for the land, and they have not paid a cent or paid like 5%, you can only pass title upon payment in full. They did that. So you're talking about, and some of them were to Indo-Guyanese and everybody too. Not just, they didn't give it to Afro-Guyanese alone. So that was the illegality surrounding lands that that took place. You recall Brassington and Ashney Singh being put in handcuffs and taken into the parliament because they sold the land, or well, pursuant to a cabinet decision. Cabinet approved this after it went through the privatization board to sell 10 acres of land to Movitong at about $20 million per acre, when the public bid before that had yielded about $12 million per acre. So they sold it pursuant to an approval of the cabinet for $20 million per acre. And guess what happened? APNU charged them, parade them in the court with handcuffs for that act. And then they turned around and went to the opening of Movitong when they were there. When the place was built, they turned around and went to the opening of the place and had Ashney Singh and Brassington charged for what was a perfectly normal transaction that had gone through the process of the privatization board and cabinet. They just signed it. That's how they treated it. Compare that to what Jordan did. There was no cabinet approval for this. Transferred the lands over. And they're talking about land policy and illegality and taking land from Afro-Guyanese using this. it is disgusting display of racism in the parliament yesterday. And they do it so naturally because it has come to them over the years, their practice at this. Their practice at this. That group can never really rise to the challenge of a new Guyana. And you know what bothers them a lot when they look at what the PPP is doing? Because the PPP is the multi-ethnic party. You know what shocked them a lot is when they saw the PYO and the images of like 16,000 people joining the youth arm and young kids of every race and every religion sitting there because they see a future with the PPP. And they don't want a country that is run by a racist group of people. They want all of our people to work and prosper together. That's what bothers them and gives them sleepless nights. So for the last week, I saw Mr. Norton making it clear. I think Norton has recognized what is happening, and that is the AFC is trying to undermine him, because Nigel Lewis has made it clear from the beginning when he was contesting the AFC leadership. He was making it clear that it's automatic. He would be the presidential candidate for the AFC APNU coalition. And then it's the arrogance that he comes along with. And Norton made it clear that you had to bring something to the table. You can't have like 2,000 supporters and get 2,000 votes and then want the top position. Two, that, anyhow, let me don't go on too much about these people. I'm wasting my time with them. So I was going to give you a long story about what I think is happening. But Norton made it clear. He took a resolution to the People's National Congress, Congress that they had, the last Congress, and they said he will be the presidential candidate, and only he will determine, if he doesn't want to be the candidate, who will be the candidate. So that's clear. So all this talk about WPA back set of criteria to choose presidential candidate in the future, everybody saying they must set up their criteria, etc. What criteria? Norton has already gotten the approval of his party through a resolution to be the candidate. So whatever criteria is set, Norton has to say yes or no. Norton has to say yes or no. It's all in his hands, and that's why I told you a few weeks ago, I'm aware that they are trying to pool money together, hopefully that they can induce Norton out of that job by maybe maybe a financial offer to get him out so that they can have another candidate. So we're watching this from the sidelines with amusement, basically. We've seen this happen all the time before because, as I said before, it does not matter what configuration they come with. If it's AFC plus the small parties, or APNU, or PNC plus the small parties, or AFC, APNU, or whatever configuration, they are they're the same people who have been there in the 5 years and had a disastrous period in government. Disastrous period. No matter whatever configuration they come up with, it would be the same people. The same ones who lied to the people of this country, who were so aloof from them they didn't care anything about their concerns, who abandoned their supporters. It's the same group. So all of this every week about criteria to select and everything else, it's really, people send this to me and I say, oh, we have been there before. We have dealt with these people before. It's the same faces. When they campaign on the platform, you're going to see the people who tried to rig the last elections, whether it's in the form of Patterson, Cathy Hughes, and the PNC and the PNC individuals. It's the same people we're going to see. And they have, the people of this country, well, they already know what they're about. So I don't pay too much attention to what they're trying to do. But Norton already has secured his party's nomination. And so Norton just has to decide who will run. And I wonder what criteria would be. It shouldn't be who pays the most. I hope it's not that. That would be that's the sole criteria. So let me deal with what I've seen. So the AFC, because this party is even more duplicitous than the PNC. And it gets help from some elements in the media. So what has happened, you will see a lot of noise during the course of the week, a lot of noise, in fact, contrived, created situations to get them into the news. The issuance of 10 press releases during the week that make no sense whatsoever, but will be prominently carried in the Starbuck News and a few other places as though they're active and that they are on the cutting edge of policy. And this is all done to mask the fact that, one, they don't have a plan until now. They promised a plan. Remember, they promised a plan. They said, we are working on a plan. We're going to work on the others, but we have not seen no plan so far, and I doubt they would have any plan. Secondly, they said, we will publish our oil and gas strategy in a short period. And we haven't seen that too. And then they were going to do a review on their role in the 2020 elections to see if they need to apologize after the review. So all of the noise, take them away. It's a smoke screen every week, jumping from one issue to the next issue, NRF, immigration policy, whatever, to get away from some core things. So let's go back to the core things. What was the role of the AFC in the 2020 elections? Did they support and help to rig the elections? So we already saw a reporter being shut down by Cathy Hughes when he sought to examine what Patterson said in 2020. Patterson said our statements of poll match the declared results by Mingo. Explicit statement. This is from a leader of the AFC, current leader of the AFC. When the reporter sought to ask about that, he said, we're not taking questions from 4 years ago. So, if Patterson said that, he said that, and now we know that it couldn't be true, it was a lie, then they had to be part of the plot to steal the elections. The AFC. They were central to the plot of stealing the elections. So he lied blatantly. But they don't want to account for their lies. Nigel Hughes, on the other hand, when asked about their role, he said, oh, I wasn't there. He was there, trust me. He was there in a very central way. A very central way. Then he asked, what should I apologize for? As though he doesn't know that they tried to rig the election. So what should I apologize for? Then when pressed and cornered, he said, I have to do a review now to find out whether we did something that we should apologize for. But the review can't be started or completed as yet. So he then blames GCOM the last week. I saw he blamed GCOM for them not being able to complete their review. And GCOM issued a statement saying they had nothing to do. He lied on GCOM. Trust me. What's the pattern here? Patterson lied in 2020 when he said they had the SOPs that showed that they won the elections and they matched Mingo's figures. Nigel Hughes and the AFC are lying now when they blame GCOM for the not meeting with them or not completing their review. They're lying. GCOM put out a long statement. Please read this statement from GCOM. It shows you how dishonest, deceitful the AFC is. Look at the statement from GCOM. So, second thing is they lied again there about this. He has so far refused. These are things they're trying to avoid, their role in the elections, because they were part of the gang that tried to steal the elections. The AFNU people. They're trying to remove that stain. They hope that they can just, by ignoring it, we will forget it. The country will forget it. By them ignoring it and refusing to answer for their role, that we will forget them trying to thief the elections, basically. These are election thieves that you see when you see them at a press conference. Then he refused to answer how much money. He pushes transparency and decency, but refuses to answer how much money he's collected from Exxon thus far. This is something he's refused to do. Thirdly, he made it clear to the people of this country that in my work, I'm not giving up the job with Exxon. I'm not going to give up that job with Exxon. And so he's on Exxon payroll. And if Exxon has a conflict with Guyana, I'm taking Exxon's side. He said that explicitly. It's there in black and white. Check the Demerara Wave story. So, clear as day, he is going to take Exxon's side on any issue where the national interest is concerned. Then the party again. So what are we getting here? Is a series of lies that they tell, and then duplicitous action. Let's examine another big lie that they told, a bold-faced lie, a couple weeks ago. So you know, I mentioned here that Exim Bank had given initial approval for a loan to the government of Guyana. Immediately thereafter, Patterson read a long correspondence that he got from their contact within Exim to say, I'm lying, and no such loan was approved, and it's unlikely to be approved from their contact. Demerara subsequently published a story saying that they had reached out to Exim Bank and Exim Bank had confirmed it. Instead of staying quiet, instead of recognizing his lie had been exposed, he came back, doubled down on the lie and said, no, it's not true. He stands by his story. Now, what has happened? Brian Nichols, who is the Assistant Secretary of State for the Western Hemisphere, 2 days ago confirmed that the loan was approved. Initial approval was given. But you know what will happen? They will shamelessly just ignore that. The big lie that he told a couple weeks ago and I dug in on at a press conference. How can you believe he'd just go there and pretend to be the paragon of virtue again? It must rub people the wrong way when you see these blatant liars. This man who said he had the SOPs, Patterson, sits at a press conference that showed they won the elections, and now, just 2 weeks ago, continuing with this lie. And you can you believe anything they say? It's just a pattern of lies all the time. And it's in character with the other people there. So, yeah, thanks. So what else? They just overload me with the lies. Sometimes I just look at the Warao issue. It's this duplicitous nature. So somehow they made up a story that the president first invited the Waraos to come down to Georgetown. Then, secondly, they shifted to someone from the office of the president invited the Waraos to come down. That was false again. Nobody invited the Waraos to come to Georgetown. Then they argued that the Waraos came to Georgetown and nobody took care of them. We saw that the Waraos came unsolicited to the city. They came into the city. They showed up in front of the president's home, State House. President sent his aide-de-camp, Mr. Edgehill, to meet with them. They got hampers. They were placed in a bus, an army bus, taken to Parika because most of them are resident in Charity. They've been in Charity for years, several years now. The army bus took them to Parika, as explained by Edgehill. They kept them there a night. They made arrangements for them to travel back. So contrast that with a number of people. If it was Granger there at State House, trust me, the Waraos wouldn't have seen anybody. They would have had to go back without any help. But Irfan Ali sent his aide-de-camp, although they didn't come at his request, sent his aide-de-camp to assist them. So they sought to politicize the issue. Now, the Warao showed up. The government treats the Waraos badly. Nigel Hughes, enabled by some reporters, they showed up with their reporters, showed up to take care of the Waraos. And he posted he's going to feed the Waraos and accommodate them, etc. By the following day, he realized that he couldn't politicize the issue any longer. And typical of the AFC, because it doesn't come from their heart, typical of the AFC, he took the Waraos and dropped them off at the ministry. He deposited them and disappeared, sped off. That is the love that they had. They lost the love from the night before. In a short period, in 8 hours, they lost all the love for the Waraos. And they disappeared once again, Nigel Hughes. This is typical of the AFC. Once he realized that there's nothing to be gained politically from it, he just dumped them again, like how they did their supporters in the 2015 to 2020 period. This time, the Waraos were the unsuspecting victims. So that is what we have to deal with the AFC. This duplicitous behavior. So he recognized he could not, he had to find an explanation. So suddenly we hear about, the Waraos were not properly accommodated because we don't have an immigration policy. Suddenly they jumped to an immigration policy. And then the racist views came in, some Bangladeshi truck drivers are here. It's all the connecting thread. Bangladeshi truck drivers are here because no immigration policy of the government. Jump to the immigration. APNU's immigration policy, what immigration policy they had? They smuggled 40,000 Haitians through Guyana. When Nigel Hughes' party was in office, all of those who sat there at the press conferences, they were there in government. 40,000 Haitians were trafficked through Guyana, smuggled through Guyana. That was their immigration policy, with the complicity of the state officials. They don't want to talk about that. 40,000. People of every race, Bangladeshis were smuggled through Guyana too. There were active gangs working, collaborating with officials of the government, smuggling the Haitians through Guyana, collecting large sums of money and passing them here through the airport. That was their great immigration policy. So you can forgive us when we view this with disgust. That it's all over the place. When he was caught with not being able to exploit the Waraos any longer, he just suddenly shifted to the immigration policy. Now, the last week, there have been focusing on the NRF. So we saw the usual suspects weigh in, the GHRA, the Gulzarans, the people, these are the fossils of the past who will never give the country a break. They'll never give the country a break. They've been here 100 years ago, and I think they're not happy to see young people and people of every race progressing and people owning things and stuff like that. They're sour people from the past. You know, so they have to run down everybody and everything. So they as predicted, they were into. So the NRF debate. So I'm not going to, I saw the president doing a live, and they asked some questions as though it's profound. Last week, I dealt with the NRF, and I spoke about people like Terence Campbell and the others who don't have a clue what they're talking about. And I pointed out their duplicity too. So I just want to make a few comments about their recent posts on the NRF. So who determines? They continue with this issue about the section of the law which says that the funds should go to national development priorities. Last week I addressed that. It's only two groups of people or two branches of the government that will determine the national development priorities. The executive branch, and then it gets approval by the legislature, the legislative branch, through the budget. So in the PPP, we have several documents that guide us when we talk about national development priorities. We have a national development strategy, we have the poverty reduction strategy, we have a competitiveness strategy, we have a low carbon development strategy. These are all buttressed by plans for the health sector, education sector, every sector. So we know what our development priorities are, and they get reflected in our budgetary proposals. And then the National Assembly approves these, and once the National Assembly approves the budget and the sum that has to come from the NRF, that's the end of the matter. So it can be anyone else who develop, not a member of the investment committee will develop or determine national development priorities, or even the board itself. So that is clear as daylight. But assuming we wanted to even say that oil money goes to fund certain activities, which is not a requirement of the law. Not a requirement of the law. Only if the law says, only if you're seeking funds for funding disaster-related activities do you have to specify precisely what those funds are going to be used for. And that the funds sought under that provision of the law will not come up against the ceiling which is established by the sliding scale that in the annex of the law. So, but for argument's sake, assuming we had to do this, let's look at how much oil money is in the budget. We made it clear that it's only, if you examine it, it's about 30% of budgetary expenditure, total budgetary expenditure. It's about $300 billion this year. So assuming we had to go to Parliament to say, oh, oil money has to fund the following sectors. Education, $135 billion. Health, $129 billion. That's $264 billion. Housing, this year's budget, $78 billion. So that's $342. If we say oil money is going to fund 3 development priorities, and anyone would say education, health, and housing are development priorities because they impact all of our people. That's $342 million already. That's more than the oil money in the budget. Only these three sectors. If we add roads and bridges, another 204 million, that's 546 million. That's 246 million more than what oil money is in the budget. Can fund. So, trying to make it look like, oh, oil money is not properly going towards development priorities is pure hogwash. Their biggest concern is the $60 billion that will go to each the Guyanese at 100,000 each. So that is their concern. So I saw now their big point now, Nigel used the lawyer says, oh, he's discovered a new feature of the act, which says now that the Minister of Finance can go to jail for 10 years if he does not publish every receipt in the official gazette and notify the Parliament within 3 months of that receipt. So suddenly he's worried about, oh, the Minister of Finance may not go to jail because Ashni Singh is not the Minister of Finance. He's the senior minister in the office of the President, with responsibility for finance. And therefore, the person will not go to jail if that provision were to be used, because the President is the minister, and therefore the President has immunity. Now, can you imagine what we're talking about? First, they tried to steal the $18 billion. The Minister of Finance under the PNC hid the 18 million US dollars, claimed they never received it when they did. A year after they received it, we found out that this money was outside of the consolidated fund and outside the balance sheet of the central bank. Could not be audited, would not have been audited by the Auditor General nor the Bank of Guyana auditor. So out there, the money is there. The Minister of Finance in that period said they thought it was a gift. A gift to whom? To whom? So now we made this change to the law to prevent it. So every receipt you get, not just big signing bonus, but if you get $10 now from the oil companies, you have to not just deposit it in the NRF, but you have to also, including any bonus, you have to notify the Parliament and publish it in the official gazette. Not 18 million, $10 could be. And if you fail to do that, you go to jail. So instead of saying, oh, this is a great advance in the terms of the law to enhance transparency, now they're concerned, oh, the minister will not go to jail, because in this case, the President is the Minister of Finance. That is their newfound criticism of the law. Not to deal with their own sordid past. So, if Nigel Hughes, I don't know, he and his, they live in an echo chamber about how great they are and how sophisticated they are. Like Cathy Hughes, Terence Campbell, and the others. But they're shallow, very shallow people. So if he were to go to the official gazette, I thought as a lawyer they do that, and look at the official gazette of 23rd of December 2020, you will see that there are assigned responsibilities to the Minister of Finance. And you will see that Ashni Singh officially was assigned responsibilities for several things, including budget, public financial management, including government accounting and financial control, all of these come there. Once they're assigned, then the minister is responsible. If their portfolio remains unassigned and not gazetted, then it remains with the president. So these responsibilities were assigned to the minister since 23rd of December 2020. And they include all of these things. And if you had any doubt about it, about who has these responsibilities, in this case, for the administration of the act, and the naming of people to the investment committee, and also who is responsible for reporting to Parliament on these on matters related to the NRF, then you should just look at practice. Now, the leader of the opposition himself wrote to Dr. Ashni Singh when he nominated Terence Campbell. Norton wrote to Ashni Singh. So Norton wasn't unclear about who is administering the act and who is responsible. By practice, he knows that Ashni Singh is administering the act. So had they just looked at these two things, the assigned responsibility, gazetted responsibility, and Terence Campbell's own nomination from Norton to Ashni Singh, he would recognize that what they're talking is garbage. It's uninformed, it's unschooled, and they think they've discovered a great, I think Norton's, well, let me don't go down that route, but they have the new law of gravity, you know, they've discovered here. They're so ecstatic about it, they're posting it all over the place. Just do your research. This is a shallow group of people, very, very shallow. I've seen it before. They just jump around all over the place, and they don't have a clue what they're talking about. But I would be even ashamed if I were them, Nigel Hughes, to even mention this, especially coming from their track record and Terence Campbell's track record, when the party that he tried to keep in power, last week I read, he joined ANUG. Imagine we were in opposition and he joined ANUG to keep us out of winning the government. He didn't join ANUG based on what ANUG was saying, oh, they wanted to bring everyone together. His duplicitous motive for joining ANUG was not to bring people together. That's what ANUG was claiming, was to keep the PPP out of office when APNU was in power. So he's acting as an agent of APNU. An agent of APNU. He said that himself, that he joined ANUG for that sole purpose. And that was his party. They should be ashamed that this is when his party was in power. That was their track record. They tried to steal the 18 million signing bonus. They can't show a single cent that is missing from the oil money. Not a single cent. Talk about transparency, etc. And by the way, when I look at the members of the board, the NRF board, so he's not even a member of the board. The NRF board, as we said before, guess who used to run the board? Jordan. The minister under their model, the man who thought that the 18 million was a gift to the PNC. Contrast that with who is chair or managing the funds now. So who are the members of the board, current members of the board? Major General Joe Singh chairs the board. Compton Bourne is a member of the board. Compton Bourne was the president of the Caribbean Development Bank, a great Guyanese who led that institution in a major way, expanded its footprint. Caroline Rodriguez, who is now in New York, but she was a former minister. Ramesh Duku from Banks DIH, who is a prominent member of the private sector, and Dunstan Barrow, who was a former PNC member of parliament, who was responsible for, I think one time, in the parliament for economic affairs for the PNC. These are the 5 members of the board. Now, each member of the board, in my view, any one of these members of the board would have, in my view, would have more integrity than Nigel Hughes, Terence Campbell, Cathy Hughes, Patterson, all put together. And that's how the board is managed. These 5 persons versus Winston Jordan, who in their model was thought money was a gift, 18 million was a gift, and hid it from us. They should be ashamed to even talk about the NRF. Should be ashamed. If I were them, I'd lock myself away for a long period. And they found something new now to talk about. But they have absolutely nothing serious to talk about. If you have an opportunity to please read a newspaper article on December 16 by Ruel Johnson. Now, I was in school when Jonestown, the tragedy, took place in Guyana. And most people didn't know and still do not know what really took place in that period. And for decades thereafter, Guyana was only known not for the wonderful people that we have of different races or all of our natural beauty or anything else. They were known around the world only for Jonestown. And so reading this letter really piqued my interest in researching back what took place in that period, because it was like a period when we didn't know what really happened. And what took place there could only happen in countries where you don't have a free media or where you have dictatorship almost. And that was the era under the PNC. We did not have a free media, and the government at that time stayed in office through rigged elections. But it was interesting to see how the government of Guyana was so connected to the leadership of Jonestown and to Jim Jones himself, and how they influenced government policy, even getting the government of Guyana to pass laws in Parliament that were favorable to them and that gave recognition to them. And then I also saw that the Nigel Hughes law firm was almost the go-between between Jonestown and the leadership of Jonestown and the PNC leadership, and even got laws or their bill amended to suit the leadership of Jonestown to be passed in Parliament. And it's all interesting for me. I'm sure this dates back to a long period, but since I saw the law firm, Nigel Hughes' law firm, it made me remember again this Exxon kind of thing, and how we did not know that this law firm was the address of the Exxon side in the negotiation, whilst he was still a member of the AFC. So it is something that people should read, and to see how far back the assault on our way of life and on our people took place. Yeah, I'll end there. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Trina Williams, Ghana Chronicle. Do you have any comments on the suspension of GTU President Dr. Mark Light and the second Vice President Julian Cambridge?
Yeah, I was shocked that the General Counsel of the GTUC, not TUC, Teachers Union, the Teachers Union, having voted to sign the agreement, would now vote to suspend the individuals that you mentioned, the president and I think vice president of the union. And I can only attribute this to something that I spoke of last week, why they were so worked up when the teachers, the PSU, the GPSU, signed the agreement with the government of Guyana, that APNU AFC were hoping to use what would have been an industrial dispute as a political ramrod against the government. And having settled these matters favorably with the teachers union and the GPSU, it took away that tool for unrest and dissatisfaction from them. And they were very, very unhappy with the leadership of these bodies. And I pointed out last week that they were using Coretta MacDonald to politicize the industrial strike that took place by the teachers. And so I have no doubt that Coretta MacDonald and the others had a hand in this, because they're not pleased with what took place there. I think, and I hope that the members of the union would file a court case against Coretta MacDonald, because she's squatting on the General Secretary's position in the union. The rules of the union prohibit her from being a member of Parliament and the General Secretary of the union. And she has done that. She's illegally in that position based on their own rules. But for them, the APNO people, they can shamelessly get up there and accuse everyone else of everything under the sun, and then don't just look inwards for a moment. So I think The president and the others who signed the agreement acted in the best interest of teachers, and he's paying a price for it, not by the membership of the union, but by the cabal that is there, the PNC cabal that is in the union, that have no concern about teachers or anyone else for that matter. So it's utterly disgusting. That's my comment.
Good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo and Ask William Skytrue News. Just a few quick questions. As we approach the end of another year, and after 4 years of managing the oil sector, can you say what are your government's accomplishments dealing specifically with ExxonMobil outside of the local content and the gas to energy project?
So outside of those are major things. Those are massive, massive things. I'm glad that finally Kaichor News is acknowledging that there are some positive things. So let me start by thanking you for raising the local content law. And I wish to point out here that APNU was urged when we were in opposition to pass this law. They did not do so because the companies did not want the law passed, the local content law. The companies made the same argument that they made to APNU, that should we pass the local content law, it might lead to them having to close shop here in Guyana. We, in spite of their position, we went ahead and passed the local content law. As a result of that law, today we have Guyanese, over 1,000 Guyanese companies benefiting from maybe $700 million of business per year. That's what it has grown to, and it will continue to grow in every sector. So an opportunity to own things with greater dignity our people can supply, from security services to rental of dwellings to guards or to cleaning services, food, a whole range of things. Things that were done by foreign companies that Exxon and the others were happy to give out to only foreign companies. They have to, by law now, only procure these services from our people, from Guyanese. And I'm so pleased that that was a major achievement, because this has not happened in many countries in the world. If you go to countries around the world that have been producing oil and gas longer than we have been, you would find they still don't have a comparable law in many of those countries. And that's why in those countries, you see the locals not benefiting from anything happening in the industry. That has changed in Guyana because of this law. So that's a great thing, and it's one of the successes of the PPP. Secondly, you mentioned the gas to energy project, and if you look at the electricity sale to people and the saving when that project is completed, you know there's some delays, but when that project is completed, and it will be completed, that will save us, the consumers in Guyana, $250 million per year. That is simply because we'll reduce electricity prices from 22 cents per kilowatt hour to 11 cents per kilowatt hour. So $250 million per year in savings to the people of Guyana. The project will cost $2 billion. In 8 years, only from their savings, we can pay back for the project. But the gas, the liquids alone that we'll get from the project, if we sell it at current market price in Guyana, the same amount of liquid would raise another $250 million per year. that comes to us for free, because when we clean the gas, that is the cooking gas and everything else. So it's a massive, massive. We will see about 250 to about $500 million US dollars a year of benefits from that, because we now have free electricity. That's a huge sum of money. So on both grounds, we have gotten more value for the people of Guyana from the oil and gas companies. We have now changed the law to correct a number of things. For example, the decommissioning fund for all the projects in the past, prior to the passage of the Petroleum Activities Bill, which is now an act, were kept, those decommissioning funds were kept by the oil and gas companies for the next FPSO license under the new act. That will come to an account that we will co-manage, basically. That's a major change in how those funds are treated. When we were in office, there was a no flaring policy. When we're not in office, we enhanced the no flaring policy, which strengthened all the provisions of the environmental, the permits, in terms of the quality of released water, the cradle-to-grave management of waste, the not just no flaring beyond commissioning period, but now a tax, a carbon tax on flaring, any unscheduled flaring, from which Exxon has had to pay millions of dollars already. All of those provisions have been strengthened, so more resource flows, but also strengthened provision. On that ground, I'm still waiting for the AG's chamber. It was my hope to table the bill before the end of the year, the oil spill legislation. They're notoriously slow in the AG's chamber, notoriously slow. I've spoken to them about many times, and they just can't get the final draft out. But I'm still hoping that if I can't make it before the end of the year, it would be there early next year. I just wanted to say that because Kaitro News has been carrying that a lot about the end of the year position that I said we'll try to get it tabled before the end of the year. So there we also, in the course of the year, we have strengthened. We now have a new PSA, new fiscal regime. We're now getting more seismic done. So there are lots of other provisions. I'm pleased that we have made significant progress in this area.
Secondly, the oil and gold companies have continued to boast about Guyana's unprecedented discoveries. Do you believe this unmatched success is reflected in the lives of Guyanese?
Yeah, so first of all, discoveries would be one thing. Producing is another. To move from discovery to production, you need a significant amount of capital invested. I pointed out that our total, the aggregate savings in our banking system now, total, for Guyanese companies and also individuals, might be around $8 billion. That's all of our savings. Every one of us, the money we have in the bank, plus the companies, $8 billion US dollars. If we had to take that to build one FPSO, we can't fund a single FPSO. That's, take all of our savings, your saving, my saving, Glenlal's savings, everybody else's savings, Norton and others. We can't bill, and banks, DIH, and everyone, we can't, we 1 FPSO. So often it takes money to move from discovery to production, capital invested. The capital to invest in the fossil fuel sector globally is becoming scarcer and harder to raise because of the fear of assets being stranded and net zero. So you have to be out there not to say, oh, we have discovered a lot of bauxite too. We have massive bauxite finds, millions, tens of millions of tons of bauxite. But why is it we can't export the bauxite? First of all, the markets have changed globally, and you need massive investments. But that has been there all these years. So for you to have a viable strategy, you have to ensure that you have a fair fiscal framework that allows an investor to make a decent return on their capital if they take the risk. But at the same time, you have a fair incentive, a flow back to the Treasury. And I think in the People's Progressive Party, we have accomplished both. We have given enough incentives for people to want to invest and risk their capital and raise capital, which we don't have. But at the same time, we have changed the fiscal terms now to ensure that our people get more. Not just the fiscal terms, but the same thing with the passage of the local content law, that more opportunities, not of a fiscal nature, but in terms of a procurement and supplies opportunity, that they benefit from this. This is how you deal with economics and growth. You can't just talk about discoveries, etc. So you will see our approach being very different than the scatterbrain approach of the AFC or the PNC. It's scatterbrain. It doesn't have any like logic to it. 1 week there for all the incentives to the other side, like they did when they were in office. They signed the 2016 agreement. They're out of office now and they want to go the other direction. We have been stable throughout it all. That's why our approach has been sustainable. So it will take time to move from discovery, even in the gold sector. Sometimes it runs you billions of dollars for the large gold mines to be developed. We believe that when I was president, we moved the royalty rate from 5% to 8% for large companies. On the other hand, APNU increased the royalty rate for the local and their final tax for the local. We had to reduce it back. So they were targeting the locals. We increased the royalty for the foreign companies, the oil company, the gold mining companies. So the approach very, very different for us. Yeah.
The president had announced that every parent would be granted a tax exemption of, I think it was $10,000 per child. Can you say how this will be rolled out?
So it's simple. When you file your tax return, so a law would be passed, and when you file your tax return, so that becomes a deductible. So if you have like 3 kids, you have a $30,000 a month. So your taxable income is say $100,000. Your taxable income will now become $70,000. So you understand it. So that is how it's an allowance per child. So it's a child-friendly type of taxation policy. So to the extent, so I think I explained it, because if your taxable income is X amount, this would be deducted from your taxable income. So your tax payments go down. Yes.
Good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo. I just have one question. Back in opposition, when you were in opposition, you had said that Guyana should be sad every time a new oil project is signed because the opposition had sold out our patrimony. Has that view changed, or does it remain the same, and why?
Yes, so I said that, and I held to the view, and not only did I say that, I said that these contracts, some of the contracts will be renegotiated, contracts. So we had at that time six of the 6 contracts. That is with Kaichor, Kanji block, several blocks. 6 contracts. So when we said we're not going to renegotiate the Stabroek contract, and because we're already in production and we will kill the momentum, that statement did not relate to the 5 other contracts that we had. Remember when I was talking about this, there were 6 contracts outstanding. So we said we will renegotiate those contracts, and we've effectively kept our promise, because we made it clear that the new fiscal regime would have to apply to all of the contracts that were outstanding or are currently there now, that were outstanding then or are currently outstanding, except the Stabroek block. So sometimes people confuse that with the Stabroek renegotiation, because there were 6 contracts that we were talking about, and we have effectively renegotiated 5 of them, because we made it clear that the new PSA would have to apply to all of the 5 that are outstanding outside of the Stabroek block. So Kanji, Kaichor, everything else. So I hope you understand that, because sometimes that becomes a bit confusing to like people who are looking at this. Oh, they said they would renegotiate the contracts, and they did not renegotiate those contracts. We did renegotiate those contracts, all 5 of them, by making the new PSA applicable to them.
Dr. Jagdeo Cordell Jones from Livewire News. Terence Campbell has filed a report against you to the ERC. Any comment on this?
So, last week I dealt with this matter extensively. So I hope that the ERC would quickly investigate this matter, and we'd have a formal report coming out of the ERC. I maintain my position that what Terence Campbell wrote and what was circulated by Nigel Hughes and others was a racist statement. Terence Campbell said, "I'm genetically predisposed to duplicity or to lying." Terence Campbell does not know my parents. He couldn't be commenting on my father or my mother. My genes come from my parents and from my ancestry. So it's a dog whistle. And in fact, it's more overt than that. If you don't know my parents, you could only be commenting on my ancestry, which is an Indo-Guyanese ancestry. And I maintain that it is a racist statement. He said, "I'm predisposed to act in a certain way because of my ancestry." He could have easily said Jagdeo is duplicitous. Just imagine if you say that if I had said that about a person of African descent, by now, everyone would have been calling on me to apologize. Every single person would have been calling. But people like Terence Campbell, they live in this make-believe world for their whole lives. They think they're special in their echo chambers when they hang out together. And so I heard it is his practice to treat people in a particular manner and then also make them feel that they're responsible for that treatment. But he doesn't know me. People like Terence Campbell, they can't bully me. He may be bullying others. What's the worst thing he would do? Beat me over my head with a drumstick, a chicken drumstick? So, he makes a racist statement about me. I said it's racist, and then he feels aggrieved that he made a racist statement about me, and he complains to the ERC that I misinterpreted his statement. What could, this is as clear as daylight, that it was a racist statement. But it's a pattern of behavior, he and his courts. And I saw not just the ERC, he wants to complain to the United Nations human rights body about this. You remember Cathy Hughes? Cathy Hughes, in the low-life case, she said she lied to the people of Linden that I wanted to give Venezuela a channel to the Atlantic, give up on our sovereignty when I was president, when she knew that I never made that offer. It came from the PNC. She then called me evil, and I said this is low-life behavior. And she filed a court case and wants to report me to the same United Nations human rights body. It's a pattern of behavior. The Warrows issue, Nigel Hughes wants to report it to the United Nations human rights body. They think the United Nations human rights body is somehow, is something. I think that they just live in this. They're so arrogant to think that the UN human rights body would even have anything to say about these matters, would even know who they are. It's a waste of time group, but it's a pattern. They feel aggrieved. They criticize people. They run you down. They have this air, the privilege air, and the moment you respond in kind or even defend yourself, they get aggrieved. Oh, how am I treated so badly? I need to go to the court. I need to go to the United Nations human rights body. So I've dealt with people like him before. And I saw he was speaking about my school. Oh, he probably went to a superior school, etc. So I think it's this thing about rural schools. And I think they talk about this in a way because it's a superiority. And this has nothing to do with race. Because people in that category, the AFC category, and who support them, they look down on ordinary Afro-Guyanese too. They think they're not privileged enough. And rural Indians are worse. They're the scum of the earth. So a school like Anna Regina, when it was having all this, the passes, and doing well, they look down on the school. Why is the government allowing this school the children there to write so many subjects? So he's worried about my school and my achievements. But let me say to Terence Campbell, when I was running this country at the age of 35 and having to make crucial decisions about the lives of our people and the future of this country, the biggest decision he had to make at that time was how much spicy chicken to fry and how much original when I was running this country. When we talk about achievements. And I was running the country at a time when the people that he said he voted for all his life and that he had joined ANOG to keep in power, they were trying to make Guyana ungovernable. The time when I was 35 years old. Through street protests, burning buildings, they were supporting criminals to massacre individuals in this country. They had left us with a bankrupt country with debt payments more than all of the revenue. That's what his cabal, the sophisticated cabal, left this party and this countryman to deal with. And so I don't have, I said last week, a chip on my shoulder about their sophistication. I think it's fake, all of this. He reminds me of someone in school, in my school, Jewel School, by the way, Campbell. So there was like a guy who used to bully people a lot. He was in fifth form. And one day at the canteen, he bullied a young boy who was second form, and the boy put some serious lashes on him. Now, when a bully gets beat up badly, his recourse, he then went and brought his mother. This was the one who used to push his chest up around the place and walk around the place. Got beaten up by a little boy. And then he brought his mother to the school crying how they took advantage on her son. This is the type like Terence Campbell, that type. So he now goes to the ERC. Oh, Jagdeo was treating him badly because Jagdeo misinterpreted what he said. It was a racist statement. He made a racist statement. So I don't want to waste time behind these people. They're fake sophisticates. They're fake. They don't. They're anyhow, let me leave it at that. That's all.
Dr. Jagdeo, Ronald Singh, GDN. Sir, there is a whiff in the atmosphere about the possible filing of a motion by the AFC to have the elections called in March. I know you would have dealt with this issue some time back.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, so do you think such a motion would stick if they do file that motion?
The elections, where they plan to file it?
Well, it would be probably at GCOM or the courts, wherever they do decide to.
Yes, I don't know where they would file it, but trust me, they would file all sorts of things. They know, I heard Carol Joseph just filed something about registration. They think that they can always win in the court when they don't have enough arguments to convince people. The parliament was convened in September. The Constitution makes it clear it's 3 months, like after the convening of Parliament, when the 5 years elapses, then the elections are held. We couldn't convene the Parliament before September because the results were not announced and declared. They were announced several times by them, but because they were trying to steal the elections. This is the usual AFC. If they do file it, we'll deal with it appropriately. We'll deal with it appropriately. But just a useless party. Useless party. Yes.
Mic test. VP Trishelle Silvers, Guyana Times. Can you tell me your thoughts about the NACI and GPL talk breakdown, and do you believe that central government will intervene?
Oh, I wasn't even aware that it broke down, so I don't know what's the reasoning behind. The reason behind it breaking down. So it would be premature for me to comment on that.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Kimal King. Vice President, last week Brazil police said that they dismantled an illegal mining scheme that extracted gold from indigenous lands over there worth $166 million, and part of the investigation found that they recruited foreigners, mostly Venezuelans, to transport the illegal gold in luggage checked on commercial flights to Guyana and Venezuela. I'm wondering if you're able to say or speak to the involvement of local law enforcement, if any, in assisting with that.
So I saw the report, and we have reports that the gold mined in Guyana is taken by some Brazilian miners into Brazil. So they said the gold is coming into Guyana. The reports we've had, I heard the president speak to the GGMC officials about this, the board members, about paying careful attention to Brazilian miners who are here, who are not declaring the gold in Guyana, but maybe taking it to Brazil. So it conflicts with what they said in that news story. They're saying their gold is coming into Guyana. Our reports are that our gold is going into Brazil. But if their gold is coming into Guyana, then definitely it's not being declared, because that would have seen a major increase in declaration. And we have had on the declaration here, for which we are taking some action now.
Okay, but do we have any such...
So we have no intelligence to that effect, that this is happening. That's it? Oh, thank you.